ESPN, celebrating 150 years of college football.
In college football, the coaches are the CEOs of the organization. They are in charge. They run the show.
One game at a time now, we can win the championship.
There is no equivalent in sports to the college football coach because you're working with young men and you're part of that development process. The cement is still wet. You can get your hands in that stuff and change them as individuals.
Right now, I think we could beat anybody in America.
There are very different dynamics and skill sets required to be a college coach versus being a head coach in the NFL. In college, you truly are acting as a surrogate father. When you get to the NFL, it's really high stakes. You're going to lose your job if you don't win, and your team owner expects you to get a Super Bowl. So it's pretty remarkable that you have guys who were able to thrive at a championship level in both spheres.
The greatest.
Guys, I want to thank all of you for coming here on the anniversary of college football. 150 years, we're celebrating the game that means so much to all of us. I can't think of another sport that encourages as much civil and sometimes not so civil discussion and debate and discourse as college football. I'm hoping most of this will be civil, but if you want to get uncivil every now and then, that might make it fun. So I want you guys to think of us as a jury. And since there are 11 of us, let's come up with top 11 in a number of categories. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, as we examine the success of coaches who've made the transition over the course of their career from college to the pros, let's start with the old guard guys who did it.
Don Coryell, the winningest coach in Aztec history in any sport. His teams won an astounding 84% of their contests and had winning streaks of 31 and 25 games.
A lot of people talk about how did football come to be, which coaches, I mean, everybody copies everybody, right? But a lot of people credit Don Coryell with their football philosophies, and I think good coaches do that. What set Don Coryell apart was his being in front of everybody with the passing game.
Following his Aztec career, Coryell coached the St. Louis Cardinals and the Chargers, leading San Diego to 3 divisional titles and 2 AFC championship games.
Paul Brown, to me, was the greatest coach that ever lived. Paul Brown won the National High School Championship at Madison, Ohio. He went to Ohio State University and won the National College Championship. He started his own team, the Cleveland Browns, and then they went on to win the championship and become one of the greatest teams in America. He was the only guy I know that won the high school, college, and pro championships.
Bill Walsh is mostly associated with the pro game, but, you know, is an extremely important figure in the history of football, if for only one reason, is that he is really the person who believed passing could be used in the same way teams had always used running the ball. And the risk of the incompletion or the interception was mitigated by the impossibility of stopping an effective short passing game.
USC turned 3 Rose Bowl victories into national championships in the 70s. Coach John Robinson and his squad hope that they can do the same thing in the first day of a new decade.
John Robinson at USC, winning Rose Bowls, winning the national championship, takes on a new challenge, goes to the NFL, stays in his city, takes on the Rams, and turns them into a Super Bowl contender. A couple of NFC championship games, and did it his way, running the heck out of the football with Eric Dickerson. But he gets to the NFC Championship game. Who does he have to face down? Bill Walsh, San Francisco 49ers. Talk about a contrast in how you did it. Run first Rams, being able to throw the ball, 49ers. Can't quite get over the hump, but still awfully successful as a head coach in the NFL.
The new head coach of the UCLA Bruins, Dick Vermeil.
Dick Vermeer was a great coach at UCLA. He took over the Philadelphia Eagles the same time I took over the Jets. He had some experience about professional football, but he had standards, and he had a very good administration, but he was a good communicator.
14 years ago, I left coaching. I left coaching because I had to, and I'm not embarrassed to say it. Today, I'm back because I have to, and I'm excited about being able to say it.
When you believe in yourself and you believe in the people you surround yourself with and you believe in your players, they will believe in you. And more often than not, you'll end up winning something really big. Maybe not this big, but something really big.
I'm going to make a case for two guys that were really connected. You know, John Robinson at USC, had a great career at USC, goes on to the Rams, great success there. And the guy that he battled was Bill Walsh at Stanford, and got the better of him as he was coming up with ways to deal with Walsh's West Coast offense, which was changing the face of football. And then Walsh gets to the NFL and wins Super Bowls. And in my mind, those two guys are kind of connected when I look at the old guard.
Well, I think one other person that has to be considered is Paul Brown, because, well, the Cleveland Browns were named after him, so he had a little bit of an impact there. But also, he coached Ohio State to its first national title.
It was fun. I don't think people realize that. You know, you won a handful of state championships, and we all remember, I mean, you basically invented the face mask, you know, the practice squad. I mean, all those
40
things.
time.
Yeah, exactly. And all these things that he did. And I don't think a lot of people realize that he won a national championship. He was at Ohio State for about 10 minutes, but he established them for what they would become, you know, forever and ever.
And if you're looking at innovations, people never give Don Coryell any credit, but what he did offensively at San Diego State, you could tie those tentacles to all of the modern passing games, BYU, West Coast offense. Air raid exists largely in part of what Don Coryell did. So today, we are still running pass routes and the running game that Don Coryell, so his influence, I think, is really understated.
All right, there's some more modern guys who've made the transition as well, coached at both college level and the pro levels with varying degrees of success. How do you stack up some of the newer guys?
I think as time goes on, what Pete Carroll did will be appreciated more.
Touchdown!
To win 2 national championships in college and then to win a Super Bowl championship in the NFL, it's really hard.
He had 2 jobs in the NFL. New England Patriots was one and the New York Jets was another. Got fired in both jobs, was out of football, got the USC job. I think at his press conference for the USC job, there weren't 10 people in the room.
But he had the enthusiasm that it takes, the passion to recruit, the personality, but he also had the brand of USC. And I always told people, if you get the right person, the right coach, you will go to the top very quickly. And it's easier to do in the college level than it is in the NFL.
I don't believe in miracles. I don't believe in shortcuts. You do your very best. You try your very hardest.
I feel that Tom Coughlin should be in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. He is a guy that did succeed at the college level. He brought Boston College back from nowhere.
41-yard attempt to win the game and end the Irish national championship hopes.
And then he was very successful, winning 2 Super Bowls as an NFL coach.
I think I'm just a person who's watching very closely everything that's going on. I want to be very demanding, not in a hollering sense, but demanding to do things the right way.
Bobby Ross is a graduate of VMI, Virginia Military Institute, and he ends up coaching at Army as a strict by-the-book guy. He has such great success in the college ranks, national title at Georgia Tech, goes to the San Diego Chargers, and he gets them to go to the Super Bowl, and then you think this guy can do it at any level.
Different coaches have different approaches. And if you watched Coach Ross, how he interacted with his players, it was a very pro approach. It wasn't super emotional. It was a business transaction. This is what we need to do. And so I think that Bobby Ross, his coaching style and his communication style already kind of fit that NFL mold, even though he was a college guy. So when he walked in the NFL, those guys responded to that.
I would definitely think Jim Harbaugh deserves his place on one of the greatest coaches of this era as a football coach. He had a nice run at San Diego in FCS football, and then he goes to Stanford. Stanford was probably the worst Power 5 program going at that point. And first they have a monumental upset of USC on the road.
Stanford, touchdown, Stanford, my goodness!
And then within 4 years, they're winning BCS Bowls, and they become known as like the most physical program on the West Coast. That wasn't easy.
It's one of the great turnarounds in college football. A Stanford football season for the ages.
And then he goes to the NFL. The 49ers had been spinning their wheels. Coaches come and go, and all of a sudden he gets them in the NFC title game and then gets them in a Super Bowl. It didn't even take long. So when you've done it at 2 places, it's not a fluke. I mean, I don't know sometimes how he does it. I know he's ultra competitive, but it works.
Let's not leave that field with anything on it. Give it your all. Let's go.
Let's go.
In the NFL, you've got to work with a bunch of grown men. It's a whole different deal. What you're trying to get them to do, what you're trying to sell, what you're trying to tell them to do. 18 to 22, a little more pliable. You might have to have some more answers on the other side. Jimmy Johnson made that transition.
Nice throw, Rusty.
He was good at Oklahoma State as a head coach. In Miami, he really made his bones because he's winning a national championship.
Jimmy Johnson's advantage over a lot of other coaches was his ability to identify talent. If you were ever on the sideline with those Miami teams in the 80s, that was a pro sideline.
Touchdown, Miami!
Jimmy's philosophy was all about speed at every position.
Urban will score!
Speed was always so important. I won fast players when I coached. I didn't want the big 260-pound linebacker. I wanted the 195, 200-pounder that could run like a deer.
Jimmy is a great manager of men in that he took the time to learn each and every guy's individual motivations on the collegiate level, and he took that same method into the professional level.
People might not know, but Coach Johnson, psychology major in college. I think it was industrial psychology. He applied that very well to understand how to make the transition. He's one of the best ones to do it because he won the national championship in college, won Super Bowls in the NFL.
Cut and slash, don't worry about anything. You're the best team. You don't beat yourself, you'll win today. You're the best team.
Barry Switzer was the head coach at Oklahoma and was awfully successful, where he won 3 national championships.
Touchdown, Oklahoma!
Recruiting is everything. That's why I think Barry Switzer is one of the great coaches in college football. He was able to bring in extraordinary athletes to play under his system.
Offensive line off real quick. Big hole, Sims, touchdown!
Jerry called me and said, "You want to coach the Cowboys?" And I remember when he did call me, he hadn't fired Jimmy yet. And I said, "I didn't know the job was open. He's fixing to be. Well, you called me when the job's open."
I hope I can do as good a job as Jimmy Johnson. That's what you're hoping, and that's damn sure what you're hoping. That's why I'm here.
So when I walk into this situation in Dallas, I didn't go there with the coaching staff. I was the only one who knew the ride. And I just tried to keep the thing in the middle of the road, keep it winning. I said, hey, I didn't have anything to do with what happened with Jim and Jerry. Give me a chance. I know what it takes to win. Let's make this thing happen.
I think Jimmy Johnson's #1 in this category because it's 2 of the most iconic places that anyone's ever coached. I mean, you've got the U, you've got the swag, he brought all that there, and then the Dallas Cowboys are the franchise, whether you believe that or not. For most of our lives, they've been the story.
Did we forget Pete Carroll? Pete Carroll. I was about to say, it took him a while to get going in the NFL, but terrific success there. And the SC teams, his SC teams, were probably the best of a generation. I mean, that run was incredible.
And he fixed a sleeping giant, too, which is not always easy to do, particularly when he wasn't the popular choice, when he got the SC job and turned it into a juggernaut.
Well, he fixed them until he burned them down.
I was going to the positive where he went to the NFL. He had the NFL experience and didn't do well. Goes back to college, has a great run, but reinvents himself in a sense and does a better job the next time he's in the NFL. So I love that he did reinvent himself and learn how to be successful.
What about the other guy who won a Super Bowl with the Dallas Cowboys? Barry Switzer, also with a national title.
Yeah, but Barry's Super Bowl is pretty much like in the Dallas Cowboy realm, it's Jimmy Johnson's team. Like, they feel like Barry walked into what was already a train that Jimmy had to get going.
A Super Bowl is a Super Bowl.
It is.
Sometimes we say, oh, you inherited. You still have to do the work. I mean, there's just no such thing as showing up and then going through a 6-month season and winning. Switzer still had to win.
Jim Harbaugh, he looked out there and saw all this spread stuff, and he said, you know what's missing from football? A fullback and a tight end and toughness. Gonna go back to old school and made Stanford in that image. you know, and then goes to the 49ers, and he looks around and he says, everybody's still spreading it out, tight end, fullback, and gets himself to a Super Bowl. So his impact,
Line of scrimmage,
you know, is still as impactful as anybody that we have on this list.
It's always a fertile recruiting ground for NFL owners to try to reach into the college ranks and pluck a successful guy and hope that that success translates to the pro franchise. But a lot of times what looks good on paper doesn't actually come to fruition. There's several guys who are good coaches, should have worked, didn't. Several really good coaches that had transition trouble.
Fun and gun is fun and gone. 12 years at Florida, Steve Spurrier never won fewer than 9 games. 2 years in the nation's capital, he never won 9 games.
As successful as Steve Spurrier was at Florida in the 90s, there was still some skepticism about whether that style would translate to the pro game.
Werfel, Jackson, got it! Jack Jackson!
So much of what made the fun and gun work was finding the open space, getting those athletes into that space, and moving the ball that way. That open space didn't exist in the NFL for those athletes.
Underthrown and picked off.
Because if nothing else, everybody in the NFL is fast and quick and big.
Nowhere to go, and he's buried by Brandon Whiting.
And his unwillingness to evolve and his stubbornness to just stick with the playbook that he had always done in college is what ultimately did Steve Spurrier in, from personnel all the way to the playbook.
What's fascinating is those whose coaching style transfers the NFL and many where it does not. Lou Holtz is a phenomenal coach. Obviously, he won everywhere. William and Mary, for crying out loud. He won at NC State. He goes to the Jets. And who's your quarterback? Joe Willie Namath. What does he care what you think?
In college, you control everything with the entire football program. In the pros, you really don't. You might have a player personnel who determines whether they're going to draft, etc. In the long run, the mistake I made when I went with the Jet was I should have went to Joe Namath and Jerome Barkham, and some of those people said, you won the championship, the Super Bowl. Now we have the worst record in the league. What's the difference? What changes do we have to make to get back there? Instead of doing it my way, you have to get more input from the players, etc.
Jets go 3-10. He resigns with 1 game left in the season, and all of a sudden, he's back in the college game where he belongs.
The reason you have heard of USC football is because of John McKay. You know, he took that job in the early 60s and turned them into an absolute machine. They went to the Rose Bowl, it felt like every year. You know, they got Heisman Trophy winners. The accolades were off the chart. You go to USC today, most of those trophies are there because of John McKay. And so I can't think for the life of me of a coach who went from having everything you could possibly want to having everything that you would never want in that Tampa Bay situation.
They go 0-14 the first year. For a guy who almost never lost at USC, that's about as miserable as you can be. And some reporter asks him, what do you think about your team's execution? And he says, I'm in favor of it.
Maybe his greatest coaching accomplishment, Rose Bowls, whatever, was somehow getting the Buccaneers in his 4th year to the NFC Championship game. I still don't know how he did it. I don't think he ever knew how he did it.
I think there's a difference between systems and good coaches. You know, like I think we've seen systems went to the NFL level and some of them worked, some of them didn't. But the guys that were good communicators continued in the NFL. So I think you can't just be a system coach and make it in the NFL.
The point is that you can recruit in college, so you get the kids you want for your system. If you coach in the NFL, you're doing it with the dudes you got, like whoever you're drafting, and it's who your GM's telling you to get, and you're getting the best athletes in general. So that's why guys who are system coaches, it's just not gonna work.
I'm secretly kind of glad Steve Spurrier didn't have a great NFL career because I think he should always be identified with college football. That's just my personal take on that.
John McKay, I'm not sure belongs in this group. I mean, he got Tampa to an NFC Championship game from scratch. Took a while, but he got them there.
Is it fair to consider Nick Saban in this category? I mean, we talk about transition trouble in the NFL. No question about what Nick Saban has done in college, either part 1 or part 2. But if you look at that NFL experience, is it fair to say he might belong in this category because there was transition trouble?
Well, there clearly was transition trouble.
Because GM troubles.
Whatever it was
trouble.
It's 15 and 17, and he comes back to
his win-loss record the best of all these guys? Yeah.
Winning percentage-wise.
Winning percentage, he was better than all these guys. So you can make the. I mean, it's a solid
fair
argument.
point in terms of the umbrella of transition trouble, and Lou Holtz is somebody that we've considered as well. And I tell people all the time that the big advantage I have over Notre Dame football players who played for Lou is they only got 4 years and I got 10 in the studio with him. So I'm.
One other point. We've given Bill Walsh credit for turning around Stanford. We've given Jim Harbaugh credit for turning around Stanford. Let's give Lou Holtz a hell of a lot of credit for turning around South Carolina.
Yeah.
And taking them to bowl games. Sure. And for Steve Spurrier winning 11 games back-to-back seasons, I never thought I'd see that.
College football is a coach's game. The NFL game's a player's game. If you watch a broadcast of a college game, big-time play, wow, coach is really pleased about that one. Boy, he really called that one. He really had a hand in that, blah, blah, blah. NFL game, player made the play.
There are different levels of responsibilities and pressures. But when you look at how different each of those skill sets are, it's pretty remarkable that you have guys who were able to thrive at a championship level in both spheres.
The results are in, and here are the top 11 college to pro coaches from the first 150 years of college football.
I really love the competition of things, and every second has got to be a very quality period of time in our preparations.
I would definitely think Jim Harbaugh deserves his place on one of the greatest coaches of this era.
What set Don Coryell apart was being in front of everybody with the passing game.
You're looking at John Robinson, the head football coach at USC.
14 years ago, I left coaching. Today, I'm back, and I'm excited about being able to say it.
We'll enjoy this. I told them till maybe tonight at 8 or 9 o'clock, then we got to think about West Virginia.
I'm excited to be a Dallas Cowboy. Who wouldn't want to be a Dallas Cowboy?
I hear people say he's a great athlete. That isn't what I want to hear. Is he a great football player?
Look, there, throw it. Look, not there, look, not there, throw it.
I think as time goes on, what Pete Carroll did will be appreciated more.
The first coach to win the National Collegiate Championship title and the Super Bowl.
The way that we talk about NFL quarterbacks is if they're a franchise quarterback, and you know how we do the tier system? So we have tier 1, and usually there's about 3 quarterbacks that exist in that world, and it's like Drew Brees and it's Aaron Rodgers. That's how you have to think about coaches that go from college to pro. Are they franchise coaches? If they're on the sideline, every year you have a chance to win a Super Bowl or a national championship. And I think that that's the difference in the way that it ultimately should be couched in any way, shape, or form.
And to your point, you can hide in college without a great quarterback. The best guy on your team has to be your quarterback to win in the NFL.